Good evening and welcome to Grace Gavel, where truth meets compassion. I am an 18-year criminal defense attorney, and what you can expect from me is actual legal analysis, not this person was let off on a technicality. Absolutely not. That is a blanket assumption, and it doesn't really answer the question that true crime junkies really want to hear, right? So, the case that I'm about ready to present to you, I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal story. Well, not really personal, but my personal feelings on this case, as well as how long this case has lived with me. This case has actually lived with me for almost 20 years. I actually moved to Orlando to go to law school. I had never been to Florida before. And I took a leap and I went on my own with my little chihuahua named Duke, who has since passed away. And I was gung-ho and justice hungry and aspirational when I started law school. And I always had this fear of someone breaking into my apartment or something along those lines. And Jennifer Kesse happened. She happened in 2006 while I was there. I was actually there in 2005, but her case actually happened in 2006. And I was riveted by that case. And Orlando did not disappoint when it came to criminal cases, unfortunately. I mean, we had Casey Anthony during that time. We had George Zimmerman during that time. Some of you all remember some of those cases. I'm trying to remember if I think Jodi Arias was also around that time, but I don't know that she was necessarily in Florida. I'm trying to recall. I think the victim of that case was in Jacksonville, I believe. Don't quote me on that one. But anyway, Jennifer Kesse has lived with me for a long time, and I continually check up on it just because I kind of feel like we both were kind of connected in a weird kind of way, if that makes sense. So I am really glad that there have been new developments in this case, and I'm going to talk about that. And I'm really happy for the family that they're finally getting, hopefully, their justice that they deserve and that Jennifer deserves. So this is the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, a case frozen in plain sight. On the morning of January 24th, 2006, a 24-year-old woman left her Orlando condo for work. The other thing that I want to share with you is I actually did an internship with the Orange County State Attorney's Office. And during that time, they were investigating Jennifer Kesse. And I remember that one of the lead detectives who was getting ready to retire had said something along the lines of that it didn't really make sense that Jennifer was living in that area because it was a bad area. And I heard that from law enforcement. And then he wanted to ask me where my apartment was. And when I told him where my apartment was, because, I didn't know Orlando, I remember him saying, well, do you out late after night? Do you walk at night by yourself? Do you this and that? I'm like, well, I have my chihuahua. And he was like, I'd like you to promise me that you will not do that again. So strong hint, over and out, received, sir. Thank you. So let's get back to this case. She never arrived. Her car would be found days later, abandoned. Surveillance cameras would capture her suspected abductor and miss his face by mere inches. There have been people who've speculated that it may have potentially been a female, which seems really unusual to be a female, but not saying that can't be the case. There was no ransom, no body, no confirmed suspect. Nearly 2 decades later, Jennifer's case remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in America, not because of what we don't know, but because of what we do. Who Jennifer Kesse was. Before we talk about the crime, we need to talk about Jennifer because she is the primary focus of this podcast right here, right now. Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old, a finance professional, independent, organized, and close to her family. She had recently purchased a condo at Mosaic at Millennia, which is the Millennia Mall. If you've ever been to Orlando, you know that big, fancy, kind of upscale mall, or was when we were there. A complex that was still under construction and, as we'll later learn, poorly secured. She was cautious, predictable, responsible. And those details matter because this was not someone who vanished voluntarily. The last known timeline, January 23rd, 2006, Jennifer returns from a vacation with her boyfriend. She speaks to her parents that night. January 24th, she doesn't show up for work. Does that sound like someone who's responsible? Absolutely not. So clearly there has to be some issue. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. That alone raises alarm bells because Jennifer was known for checking in, being reachable, and following routine. By that evening, her parents are already driving to Orlando. The condo, a critical detail. Jennifer lived in a condo complex still under construction. Workers, many undocumented, many unvetted. I don't know necessarily that the undocumented matters because, ultimately, there are people looking for a better life. But the unvetted part, maybe background checks would have been necessary. Move freely through the property. Security was minimal, lighting was poor, and visibility was obstructed. Jennifer had expressed discomfort about this before. This is an important legal factor too, because environmental vulnerability plays a huge role in opportunity crimes, and that seems to be what this might be. The discovery of her car. 2 days later, Jennifer's black Chevy Malibu is found 1 mile away. Parked nearby, no signs of struggle inside, and no forensic jackpot. But what is found is surveillance footage from a nearby apartment complex. The surveillance footage that haunts this case. The footage shows a person parking Jennifer's car. As the individual walks away, their face is perfectly obscured by fence posts, frame by frame. It's one of the most infamous near misses in the true crime history. We have the suspect's height, their gait, their clothing, but not their face. Legally, the footage is both invaluable and absolutely devastating, especially for those of us who've been following this case for so long and know how their family must feel. What was found and what wasn't? Jennifer's personal items, her purse, her phone, her briefcase, all missing. No confirmed blood evidence, no confirmed DNA tied to a suspect. From a prosecution standpoint, this is a nightmare. There's no leads to pursue. Because suspicion is not evidence, and evidence must survive court. The primary theories. There are 3 dominant theories in this case. 1, a construction worker at her complex. Opportunity, familiarity, access. They would also know the spots to go, given the fact that they've been in that environment for a while, likely. 2, a targeted abduction, someone who had been watching her routine. Given the fact that she had a routine, that could have made her susceptible to being grabbed. Not that it's her fault. 3, a random crime of opportunity, wrong place, wrong time. Each theory has merit and holes. Why this case is hard to solve. Legally speaking, no body limits charges. No body, no crime, right? She could be still walking around somewhere, or she could have left voluntarily, which might not match her character, but there's that option. No DNA limits suspects. No confession limits closure. And early missteps, including delayed evidence processing, may have cost investigators irreplaceable leads. This is where cold cases often freeze. Let's talk about Jennifer Kesse's family. How awesome they've been, how hard they've persevered to try to find Jennifer. Jennifer's parents never stopped. They sued for police records, they hired private investigators, and they kept her story alive. Their persistence revealed investigative gaps and brought renewed scrutiny to the case. This is advocacy at its most painful and most powerful. Has anyone ever been charged? No. There have been persons of interest. I believe James hadn't at one point, because he had actually, I believe, gone to the same bar that Jennifer Kesse had gone to. And there was another lady, I forget what her name was, maybe Tracy or something along those lines when I was down there, who had actually given James Haddon a ride, and he had tried to harm her by hitting her head against a steering wheel or something along those lines. And so they had said that the violence there kind of alarmed them, especially because they ran in, I guess, similar circles in some ways, is my recollection. I'm not saying that's completely 100%. So if you're interested in that angle, that might be something to look at. But there have been tips. There have been rumors, but no one is charged, no charges, no resolution. Lastly, the case remains open and unsolved. Let's talk about whether or not this case could still be solved. Yes. If preserved DNA is to be retested. And as of the latest update on this case is not considered to be a cold case. It is now an open and thriving case. They have been going through suspects and discounting people, meaning removing them from the list. And there have been people that they're looking further in. Additionally, think about 2006 versus 2000, almost 26 right now. I mean, the DNA game is crazy. It has advanced leaps and bounds. Now we realize that we can actually use family trees to actually do analysis of family members to be able to get back to the original suspect. So genetic genealogy is being applied. If a witness comes forward here, or someone finally talks, because, ultimately people do end up talking because that kind of information is extremely heavy. And cold cases don't end when time passes. They end when truth surfaces. And there is no statute of limitations for murder. So if this is discovered, that person could clearly be charged with this crime. So in closing, Jennifer Kesse did everything right. She was cautious, she was responsible, and she was loved. And she has a community who knows who she is and is hoping that she's able to get the final rest that she deserves, and that her family can finally rest knowing that, she was a victim, but she hasn't been forgotten, and she's been found, and she's home wherever her family wants that home to be for her. And yet she vanished, right? That's unfortunate. Her case reminds us that justice is not always swift, but it is still owed. And if you know something, even something small, Jennifer's story is still waiting. Her face was missed by inches. Her case remains open. Jennifer Kesse disappeared in 2006, and justice is still waiting. Follow Grace and Gavel for victim-centered true crime. Share this episode to keep Jennifer's story alive, and leave a review to support compassionate case coverage, because covering crimes does not have to be sensational, right? We can be compassionate and thoughtful of the family and for those that they leave behind. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.